welcome everybody. Good morning to everyone who's joining us from the US, and good evening to all who are joining us from Israel, Tanzania, or Nepal. This is our first seminar of the Global FEWture Alliance International Webinar Series. I am Suhana Chattopadhyay, the Program Manager for Global FEWture Alliance. And for those of you who have not heard about this alliance, I'm happy to ask Dr. Amy Sapkota, the PI of the Global FEWture Alliance, to introduce and outline its mission.
Great. All right, so thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. So we're delighted to launch our Global FEWture Alliance International Seminar Series. The Global FEWture Alliance was recently launched just 6 months ago through funding from the University of Maryland Grand Challenges program. And here on the slide, this is in a nutshell the grand challenge that our large international team will be addressing. So if we look globally across the entire world, we have billions of individuals who are food insecure, energy insecure, or water insecure. And oftentimes, if a community is water insecure, it also tends to be both food and energy insecure. So in the past, when groups have sought to bring about change with regard to food, energy, and water insecurity, oftentimes approaches have been very siloed, where teams will address a water issue in particular or a food issue. But what we are proposing is that to really have sustainable solutions in these food, energy, and water systems, we really have to approach this through a systems thinking holistic lens and address all three areas of the food, energy, water nexus. So this is sort of the context of our Global FEWture Alliance. And our overall mission and goal is to alleviate food, energy, and water insecurity, to protect environmental and global public health, and to bolster community resilience in a changing climate. So as we launch our alliance, we'll be focusing in 4 geographical areas: Maryland, Israel, Tanzania, and Nepal. And what we think is innovative about our approach is that we are combining a research to action paradigm along with community-driven capacity building and experiential education, at the same time working on projects that address all 3 areas of the food, energy, water nexus. So for example, a project here in Maryland may address water reuse along with horticultural interventions and bringing in renewable energy technologies at a certain site. So that gives you a gist sort of our alliance at a glance. And today I'm delighted to introduce our very first speaker. Our first speaker is Jen Cotting. She is the director of the University of Maryland Environmental Finance Center. And for over 20 years, she's worked to advance local environmental and sustainability initiatives through the Environmental Finance Center, which is one of a network of centers throughout the United States. As director, Jen has been instrumental in developing, as we bring up her slides, in developing the EFC's programming, partnerships, reach, and reputation. An advocate and ally for community needs, she's leveraged university resources, funding opportunities, and partnerships to build transformational programming around stormwater management, water and air quality, resiliency, and green initiatives, applying best practices on the ground in communities across the Mid-Atlantic. Signature programs like Sustainable Maryland, for which Jen helped secure $500,000 in yearly funding from the Maryland General Assembly in 2022, deliver tangible quality of life impact for Maryland residents across the state. So we're delighted that Jen will be speaking with us this morning about some of the Sustainable Maryland initiatives and how the Environmental Finance Center will connect and link into our new Global FEWture Alliance.
Great. Thank you for that introduction, Amy. I will share my screen here. Well, thank you all for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you may be zooming in from around the globe. As Amy indicated, I'm Jen Cotting. I'm director of the Environmental Finance Center. And we're going to talk a little bit about some things that are going on specifically in Maryland. So today, I think what we are aiming to do is to demonstrate how a university-based program like our Sustainable Maryland program can advance local sustainability efforts on a statewide basis. And then we'll also talk about, through a specific project that we're looking at under the Global FEWture Alliance, how we'll be identifying how the food and energy water nexus can be leveraged to create efficiencies for our communities and the programs that they're trying to roll out. So some of the things we'll talk about over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, a little background on who the Environmental Finance Center is, a little background on our Sustainable Maryland program. We'll revisit some of the things that Amy shared about the Grand Challenges program, how it relates, and the Global FEWture Alliance, and how it relates to a project that we're looking at doing with the city of Hyattsville here in Maryland. So I thought we'd get the most obnoxious slide out of the way first. There's a lot of content here, but I just, we're going to be talking about a number of different organizations, and I thought it just might be helpful to understand how they nest into one another. We are the University of Maryland. We're the state's land grant institution, which means we are dedicated to research, education, cultural and technology strengths, strengthening the citizenry of Maryland. So it's really about, what can the university do to improve conditions for the folks in the state of Maryland. We happen to be located, my center, the Environmental Finance Center, happens to be located at the University School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. So it's, that is a school that's strategic plan is dedicated to education and scholarship, but most importantly, how we translate those things into practice and improve communities to be more just, more sustainable. My center, the Environmental Finance Center, really functions like an extension arm of the university, of the School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. So we are the ones who are helping the things that are going on in the school in terms of scholarship and education and research, and really translating that into actionable things in communities throughout the state. And for my center, because we are regional throughout the Mid-Atlantic. And then finally, one of EFC's, one of the Environmental Finance Center's flagship programs is our Sustainable Maryland program. And that we'll dive into a little more detail about that and how it relates to Global FEWtures and how it relates to this Hyattsville project that we're going to talk about this morning in a moment. So if you're not familiar with the Environmental Finance Center, that's our building here on campus, Prankert Hall, in slightly colder times, as you can see from the snowfall. We work throughout the Mid-Atlantic, as I mentioned. As Amy mentioned, we're a network of centers across the country, and really the core mission of these centers is to help provide the information and the tools and the resources that build community capacity to figure out how they're going to pay for the resource protection and restoration priorities that they have identified as being important to their community. And we do this across a number of environmental sectors or environmental media. Obviously, climate and resilience is top of mind. We also do work in water and green infrastructure, water being drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, you name it, all sorts of water systems. As I mentioned, Sustainable Maryland obviously is a program that is very focused on sustainability. But we also do work in energy, air, agriculture, food systems, waste, you name it, but all with a climate and equity lens, and all with a focus on that, how are we going to pay for this question? And we do that a number of ways. We do capacity building, we do trainings and workshops. We have a municipal online stormwater center that offers on-demand curriculum around dealing with stormwater challenges and green infrastructure and urban tree canopy. We do a lot of policy analysis and financial assessments. We help communities build out financing strategies. We can look at their budgets and help provide some feedback on where they can improve efficiencies. And then we also do what goes hand in hand with the finance conversation is really a lot of community outreach and engagement, and really making sure that we are not presuming what a community wants or needs in terms of the challenges they are facing or the solutions they would like to see. And so make sure that as we're working with the community to help them identify financing strategies for their natural resource protection and restoration, that the solutions are a reflection of the community and not a reflection of our center. So to offer a little context for those of you in other parts of the globe who don't know Maryland particularly well, we are a small but very diverse state, and we'll talk about that a little more in the next slide. The Chesapeake Bay dominates the landscape. So a lot of the work that our center does really focuses around water quantity and water quality management. There's also a lot of regulatory implications for improving the water quality of the Chesapeake Bay to reduce nutrient loading to the Chesapeake Bay, so that helping communities address those regulatory requirements is also a big part of what we do. And then Marylanders are ridiculously passionate about a few things. Our flag, which you can see here in this little poster here, we're pretty passionate about blue crabs. They are delicious, particularly in crab cake form, but they're also a really major part of our economy. And they have become the swells and the booms and busts of their population have become one of the indicators that we look to about the health of the bay. And then Old Bay. Oh my goodness. It is a salty, spicy mix of seasonings that was intended for use for seafood. It's been used for manufactured in the state for over 70 years. Again, intended for seafood. I know people who put it on their eggs, on their popcorn, on their ice cream, and there is even now an Old Bay vodka, which sounds just ridiculous to me, but I suppose just a demonstration of how passionate we are about those things. So, a small but diverse state. We are the 9th smallest state in the United States, but we are the 18th most populous state. So, and we really, the state is really sort of in my opinion, some say 5 regions, some say 3 regions. I tend to look at it as 4 regions. So you have here from Frederick County, Washington County, Allegheny County, Garrett County. These are, we refer to that as Western Maryland. And this is where you find a more mountainous terrain. The Appalachian Trail runs through there. This is where you go if you want to see beautiful fall foliage as the leaves turn. This is where you go for your winter sports. And then we have this central corridor here. And this is the central corridor is the counties that are on either side of Interstate 95, which is the main north-south route on the East Coast. It links the district to Baltimore and then beyond to Philadelphia, to New York. And these are, as you can imagine, very highly developed, very densely populated parts of the state. And then went down here, Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary's County, and southern Prince George's County, southern Anne Arundel County. This is southern Maryland. It's part of the Atlantic coastal plain. This is where you're going to find prehistoric fossils. You're going to find Native American and African American archaeology sites. Farming was a strong history of farming. Originally, a lot of tobacco was grown there. Now it's corn and wheat and soybeans. And as you can see, a lot of coastal area. So fish and shellfish harvest is also a big part of the culture there. And then over here on the other side of this is the Chesapeake Bay here. Over here on the other side of the Chesapeake Bay, we have the Eastern Shore, which is between the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. And this is flat, a lot of farmland, a lot of rural communities. You've got wheat and corn and soy grown there, tomatoes and cantaloupes. Chicken houses are a big part of the Eastern Shore. And then also, again, with all the coastal area, the fish, crabs, oysters, a rich history of people living along and making a living off of the water. So this is our Sustainable Maryland program. That's a pretty diverse set of community types and needs. And our Sustainable Maryland program had to think real hard about how we were going to serve all of those different types of communities. This is a program that's been around for about a decade now. As Amy indicated, after a decade of sort of scraping together budgets to make this program a reality, we were fortunate enough to have the General Assembly take a look at the history of our work and recognize the value in it, and is now making a $500,000 annual investment in the program, which is just really wonderful and an opportunity for us to really go big with the program. The program works with municipalities and now is branching into working with homeowners associations. It's a free and voluntary certification program that comes with a great deal of technical assistance to municipalities, really helping to meet their needs around the policies, the resources, the incentive programs, the information and resources that they need to advance the sustainability initiatives that they have decided are important to them locally. And, what goes along with this are annual leadership trainings and green team trainings in every community that we work in. We help stand up a green team, and this is a collection of elected officials and municipal staff and residents that bring their own sets of expertise together, and they take ownership of the sustainability action plan that they put together, and they really drive the implementation of that plan. The other thing that the program does is it really, once we now have a network of green teams across the state, and we serve as a convener to be able to foster peer-to-peer exchange, peer-to-peer learning, and again, just having that network of folks that they can lean on as they move their initiatives forward and learn from. And so for the certification component of the program, there are different action categories that you can see here, and that, it really spans the environmental gamut: transportation, land use, habitat, stormwater, waste, health, local economies, food systems. That within each of these action families, there are dozens of different specific actions that communities can take to earn points towards certification within the Sustainable Maryland program. And the dozens and dozens of actions are a reflection of, again, that diversity within the state. So we wanted to make sure we had so many different opportunities for communities to tailor their sustainability, their collection of actions, and where they focus, tailor that to what is locally important to them. So that certification, what does that look like? We currently have 2 levels of certification. We'll be expanding that with additional actions and additional levels now that we have the resources to be able to do that. But the bronze level means a community has accrued across all of those different actions within all those action families 150 points. There are 2 mandatory actions. They have to create a green team, which we will help them to stand up. And then that green team needs to develop an action plan, which we also help them develop. And then they have to do at least 2 of 6 priority actions. These are actions that the folks who, as we were developing the program with expertise from all sorts of different state agencies and academic institutions and community-based organizations and you name it, foundations, funders, these were areas that we thought were really important for communities to incorporate. So 2 out of those 6 priority actions. And then for the really ambitious communities, they can pursue silver certification. So that's 400. They have to achieve 400 points across the actions. Again, those same 2 mandatory actions for green teams. And then they will do 4 out of 8 priority actions. And again, this is all with support from the Sustainable Maryland team, our team, to help them think through how they want to do this, connect them with resources to be able to do this. So it's not, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And they have to document all of this. So this is not a rubber stamp sort of certification. This is a program that is robust, and the certifications are defensible. So across the state, there's 157 municipalities in the state of Maryland, and 88 of those are registered in our program, which is exciting. Even if you're you don't have to be certified to get the services of the program. You just be registered in the program and have access to all of this. So 31 of those, 31 of the municipalities are at the bronze certification, and 11 are at silver. And you can see here some of our green teams in action, poring over their action plans, looking over maps and figuring out, where might be a good location for certain projects. And then some of the projects that we've seen. This here is a pollinator meadow that University Park installed and got points for. Up here, you see some pervious pavers that the town of North Brentwood put into a new park to alleviate some flooding and some stormwater management challenges. So that's the Sustainable Maryland program in a nutshell, and we'll come back to that in a moment and why I went into all that detail. And then just to revisit some of the things that Amy touched on, at the beginning. The University of Maryland went through a strategic planning process. They identified taking on humanities grand challenges and advancing public good as 2 of their 4 major priorities, major initiatives moving forward. And they backed that up with a commitment, back that commitment up with the Grand Challenges Grant Program, which is supporting the work that we are doing as a team right now. So that was to support projects across the university that would address issues like climate change, social injustice, and health and education disparities. And the university, about 6 months ago, invested over $30 million in competitively awarded grants to 50 different projects. And some of those are happening at like an individual researcher level. Some of those are happening in teams. Some of those are projects that we're going to have a very particular impact on the ground that the university wanted to be a part of. And then 3 of those things happened at the institutional scale. And that's where we are. That is the award that we received. The Global FEWture Alliance is one of those 3 institutional level awards, as Amy indicated, really looking to transform the food, water, energy solutions to make sure communities are more resilient to climate. We've got $1 million a year for the next 3 years, which is matched with $1 million from the team. So $2 million a year investment over the next 3 years to really do something transformative around food, water, and energy. And then, this slide will look familiar. This is where, this is how Amy introduced the program. We are going to specifically talk about some things that the Maryland team has going on today. But again, just a reminder, this is about research to action. This is about action that is driven by what communities are truly wanting to see happen and transform in their community. And then, we're an academic institution, so we want to make sure that we're taking full advantage of those experiential learning opportunities for our graduate and undergraduates. So again, I'm part of the Maryland team, and our year 1 work plan is focused on a few things. We don't want to go into this presuming that we know what the on the ground needs are in the state. So we're starting with a needs assessment of the water and energy use for food production in the state. We're also reviewing the status of current Maryland food, energy, water projects. So, what good stuff's already going on, and where is the most appropriate place for our team to plug in and be supportive? We are identifying a few pilot sites for some food, water, energy projects. We will be figuring out how we're going to collect and share data. We'll be putting an advisory panel together and hosting our first advisory panel meeting in year 1. And then, just to indicate with the arrows there, what the rest of our conversation this morning is really going to focus around this idea about finding pilot sites to work with in year 1. And when we were thinking about where do we find a pilot site, it's year 1. We need to be able to demonstrate some progress, even though it's early on in the project. We're only 6 months in. So if we're going to need to demonstrate progress and we're only 6 months in, we really wanted to focus on where are the places where we already have a trusted relationship with a community that we can build on. Where are the communities that are already starting to do some of this food, water, energy work? And how can the university be a good neighbor to our surrounding communities? So we started with looking, at the Sustainable Maryland program and the participants in that program, because these tend to be communities that have a sustainability and a resilience ethic. And we looked at Prince George's County communities specifically. Prince George's County is the county in Maryland that the university is located in. It also happens to be the county that has the most municipalities in the state. 26 of the 27 municipalities in Prince George's County are registered in the program. 13 of them have that bronze certification. 3 of them have that silver certification. And when we started looking at the communities and what kind of projects that they had submitted to receive points for certification, we really honed in on who's already doing some food work, because if they're already doing food work, we can probably figure out the water and energy piece. And we landed on the city of Hyattsville. So if you're not familiar with Hyattsville, and it's really long-standing community established over 130 years ago, has a population just over 20,000. So not too small, not too big, pretty urbanized. And it, I think it's a pretty good reflection of a lot of the diversity that we see across the state. 36% Latino population, 31% white population, 28% Black population, really a really nice, diverse population. About 50% of, there's about 50-50 split on home ownership versus rentals. 45% of households speak a language other than English at home. The median household income is just over $84,000. I think that skews high. I think that there are a lot of folks from the university that perhaps are better compensated than the average folks in Hyattsville. So I think that skews that MHI a little high. A 9.2% poverty rate, which is really on par with the 10% poverty rate for the state. And major revitalization efforts have been going on in Hyattsville since, over the last couple decades. There's a real focus on transit-oriented development. There are 2 metro stations within the community that they're aiming to build out around. There's been a concerted effort to develop an arts district. They have they're known for their murals on buildings, and they have a whole sort of walking tour that you can do to see all the different murals. And that arts district is being developed in coordination with adjacent municipalities who are also along the same major transportation corridor. And there's a real swell in brewers and distillers repurposing old commercial buildings. And the community has 2 food forests, one that they established on Emerson Street about 5 years ago, and one that they've developed in McClanahan Food Forest, which is over near one of the 2 metro stations, literally a walking path right through for folks who are passing through to the metro. And this was really an attempt to address food insecurity in the city. And community members are encouraged to harvest, seasonally available fruits and greens. It's an entirely pesticide-free area. The gardens have shrubs and herbs and berries and fruits and nuts that are all safe for human consumption. The plantings were very intentional. They are native plantings. They were designed with having multiple seasons of harvest in mind. There's a really great website that the city offers that talks about how to be respectful of the plantings, how to be respectful of the fellow community members, how to know when produce is ripe, what to bring from home if you want to harvest from one of the forests. Like, you're going to need, clippers, or you're going to need to bring a basket, or you're going to, want to have paper towels with you, what have you. And then they also talk about how to properly wash and harvest the fruit. They encourage children and pets. They want this to be a family affair. There are dog waste stations to make sure that we are all responsible dog owners when you visit. And then there's a map that we can actually take a look at one of the maps here. They have information about the harvestable items that's routinely updated with timelines, and how do you assess ripeness, and how do you, what are the best methods for harvesting. And they also offer these maps that sort of, and recognizing that they are not 100% accurate, as things, some things do well, some things don't do well, and you may have to replace with a different type of shrub or fruit or nut tree or something. But it gives the community an idea of which types of fruits and nuts and berries and what have you are available, and what times of year you can access those. They've inserted, as you can see, they have these quote unquote living rooms and arbors and benches. They really want to encourage folks to view these as human habitat as much as anything else. And here is a bed of kale in one of the 2 food forests. So, we thought, well, Hyattsville's food forest might be a great place for us to start to think about how we might do a pilot project. And, we can leverage that trusted relationship that we have with the city through Sustainable Maryland. They've got that sustainability ethic. They've got the established food forests. And so we thought what we could do, and the city, thankfully, was very excited at the opportunity to have this conversation. We were able to assess, we thought we could bring the expertise of the university to the city to assess their needs, talk about what, these have been in place for 3 to 5 years now. What are the challenges that they're facing? What kind of water needs do they have? What kind of energy usage is there? and where can we bring the university's expertise to help provide some recommendations for how they might operate more efficiently, or how they might address some of those challenges that they're having. And so this is going to be a collaborative effort with the city to make some recommendations over the course of the next year, really work through with them to figure out which of those, potential recommendations or solutions or practices that we suggest are of interest to them. Really, again, remembering that we really want to make sure that this is a community-driven effort, not a university-driven effort. And then because we're a finance center, literally finance is our middle name, the Environmental Finance Center will help to figure out, for the solutions that are of interest to the city, can we identify some funding programs that could support implementing some of those practices. And so we had the good fortune to be able to do a portion of the Maryland team had the good fortune to be able to do a site visit this week. So in the top left corner, you have Lincoln Smith, who designed the garden, and he's showing us how to properly crack open a pawpaw. And if you're not familiar with pawpaw, you can see, and going clockwise in that next picture, it is the largest indigenous fruit in North America. When it's perfectly ripe, it tastes like a mango custard almost. And you can see there they are putting QR codes and signage for all of the different plants that they have in the food forests, so that if folks are unfamiliar, they can just pull out their phone, they can click that QR code, it'll tell them what the fruit is, they'll tell them all of those other wonderful things that the website, the city's website has about when to harvest, how to prepare it, how to clean it, all those little bits and pieces that you would want to know. The lower right photo is our Maryland team that was able to do the site visit, as well as two of the folks from the city. You have Dawn Taft here, who is in charge of sustainability programs for the city, and she is also the city arborist, and she is responsible for the food forest. And then we have Priyanka Joshi, who is also with the city, and she is responsible for a variety of their sustainability programs. And over here you have Dawn showing off the fig trees that are just getting ready to be fully ripe. And so we're having this conversation with the city about, not only to get familiar with the food forest, but to talk about what are some of their challenges, what are the needs that perhaps the university could be supportive of. On the food side, it was abundantly clear that maintenance was the main challenge. They also felt like they could be better promoting within the community awareness of the availability of the food forests. In this picture, you see Dawn pointing over to another part of the food forest, and she was talking about how an elderberry bush had gotten so overgrown that it was forcing an apple tree that she's been fostering to start to grow in a very awkward way. And it was really just a result of not having the time and the capacity to be able to be in there and doing the kinds of pruning that really needed to be done. On the water side, they talked about establishment watering really being a challenge. And then just the unpredictability of climate. These are native plants, and they were selected to have low water demand. But, we have wet periods and we have dry periods that we have not previously had. And that's not, things that were native and flourished at one point are starting to behave a little differently as we have a more unpredictable climate. And then the energy needs were a little less well defined. I think we'll be able to do some additional exploration and figure out how we might be helpful in that regard. We had talked potentially about some lighting, but that is a complicated issue because sometimes lighting invites some after hours activities in open spaces that are not desirable for a community. So you can see all those happy faces on all of us back in there in the food forest, because the more we talked, the more it was like popcorn, the more ideas that came to the surface. And the city was excited and we were excited. And there's just a lot of opportunity to work with the community on this. Could we think about rain barrels or cisterns to address some of their water needs? Could the city, you can see it a little bit back here. There's an automotive shop that's adjacent to the food forest with a very large roof. Could we partner with them and figure out how to do some rainwater harvest from their building? Could the county's rebate program help pay for some of that? Composting was mentioned as something that would be value added for food forest operations. We talked about the opportunity to use the food forest as a living classroom and do having those experiential learning opportunities. And then, also on that idea of, expanding capacity for maintenance, could we work with one of the landscape architecture courses or some of the other courses that would be relevant to expand the city's capacity to be able to address some of those maintenance needs. So in terms of next steps, I think in the near term, we'll be reconvening, the Maryland team will be reconvening to talk about what we experienced at the site visit and start to refine some of those ideas that were generated, some of that popcorn. We'll think about potential paths forward and we'll put something together for the city to react to and give them an opportunity to sort of think through the ideas that we present and what makes sense for them, what doesn't, and really lean on the city's vision to prioritize what those solutions of interest might be. And then if we're thinking, this is a 3-year award that is intended to have a lifespan beyond those 3 years. And so thinking long term, like there's an interest in having a food forest in every ward in the city. How might we be able to what steps could we be doing now to help set them up to be able to do that moving forward? Thinking about, the other communities within the county or the state that might benefit from having this type of food forest. Food insecurity is rampant throughout the county. So, where are some of those other opportunities to expand these good practices? And then if we've got food forests going on in multiple communities within the county or within the state, how do we convene those folks so that they can become a peer network for one another and learn from one another? And then, this is a global effort. So how can we take what we're learning in Maryland and share those with the other folks in other parts of the world that are a part of our team? What might be helpful there? What might we learn from those other communities that we can bring to Hyattsville? And I'll end on this note. While we were out there doing the site visit, and we were all just so energized by these food forests. And sure enough, if this wonderful woman and her adorable little boy wandered over while we were touring, and he had his bowl with him ready to go because he wanted to go pick from his strawberry patch. And I think that kind of made all of our hearts swell, because that's really what this is all about at the end of the day. The city wants the community to feel ownership over this and access it and make the most of it. And so that was just a lovely way to end our site visit, to see this little guy and shoveling strawberries into his face as quickly as he could. So with that, that's the end of what I had to share.